This is Ayara, first of Locthwain, and this is why my friends hate her. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's commander is Ayara, first of Locthwain. She's a 2/3 elf noble for 3 black mana. Whenever she or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life, and you can sack another black creature to draw a card. Canonically, Ayara gets married, and her suitor dies, and then she gets married and has another big party, and then he dies. Eldraine had a lot of really nicely flavorful cards, and this is definitely one of them. And the moment I saw it, I had to do something with it just because I'm that kind of person. So before we get too far, our personal disclaimer: I've been playing this game since 1994. I've managed to accumulate an awful lot of cards in that time. So if there's cards in here that look like they're really expensive, odds are I pulled them out of a pack or traded for them when they came out, and they just, over time, went up. All decks are personalized to our local meta with me and my friends. We're not terribly competitive, mostly trying to have fun and try out dumb ideas. This is a dumb idea that's working spectacularly. If you see cards on here that make no sense at all, well, that's because it's my deck, and it's going to have my little tweaks to it. So when you look at Ayara's first ability of black creatures coming into play, the first thing you're going to think is, how do I spam stuff into play? And that's exactly where I went with this. Dreadhorde Invasion gives you a zombie army, and then it slightly pumps it up unless you don't have a zombie army, in which case it gives you a zombie army. So you get one, she sacks it for a card, you get another. Normally this will cause you to lose a life, but it comes into play, you gain one and steal one from your opponents. You've managed to net something. Same thing with Bitter Blossom. Sat's Will has a couple weird abilities, one of which is to remove all cards from your opponent's graveyards, and you get X01 Thrall tokens, where X is the largest power of things removed this way. The other ability is that it forces an opponent to sacrifice their biggest things. So not only is it gone, it's really gone. And then you made everyone bleed with a bunch of Thrall tokens. Abhorrent Overlord is a 2 black and 5 demon. Then when it comes into play, you get a flying harpy token for your devotion to black. This deck is very permanent heavy, so I tend to have an awful lot of black mana symbols on the table. You get a whole bunch of harpies, you have a giant pile of creatures to help further defend yourself from what you're doing, and you bleed everyone a whole bunch. And then for just absolute spite value, Army of the Damned, which I understand costs 8 bloody mana, but it puts 13 guys on the table. So you're gaining 13, each of your opponents is losing 13. This is a big swing. It also makes you a big target. Now you've got all those tokens, what are you going to do with it? That or any other creatures. Carrion is a 2 black and 1 instant. You sacrifice a creature and you get X01 black insect tokens, where X is its power. So if you have something big in play, and there are some pretty big creatures in here, you can just chump off because they're not worth it anymore. And Ghoul-Caller Giza lets you pay a black, tap, sack another creature, and put X22 zombie tokens into play where X is its sacrifice power. If nothing else, you can just sit there and turn 1 zombie into 2 zombies, and then turn 2 zombies into 3 zombies, and so forth. But there are better things to turn into zombies once they've done their effect and they've hit the table. Ayara's first ability also makes some cards a little less painful. Now, while normally I would wind up playing these 4 cards, Dusk Legion, Zealot, Phyrexian Rager, Gargantua, and First Sphere Gargantua, in some manner of black deck because they're efficient creatures for their size, and they draw you cards. Well, with her out, Dusk Legion, Zealot, and Phyrexian Rager are guaranteed increases in life, and you get a card. Phyrexian Gargantua, if you're playing a 4-player pod, you're going to lose 2, gain 3, get 2 cards. It's an awful lot of stuff going on the table just right there. And then, once these are out, and they've done their thing, you can either use Carrion or Ghoul-Caller Giza to turn them into zombies, just so they do something once they've spent themselves. Phyrexian Gargantua is a 4/4, First Sphere is a 5/4. They're not terrible creatures to have in play. And if something happens to them, well, Ayara can stab them for a card. So now you've got all this life, what do you do with it? Well, the obvious solution is to spend it. Life is just another resource when you're playing black, and there's nothing, you got something, you might as well spend it. Phyrexian Arena will ping you for 1 every upkeep, and you draw a card. Bloodgift Demon does pretty much the same thing, but it's a 5 casting cost flying demon, so it's a body on the table, and it's black mana for the Overlord and a couple other things. Dark Prophecy, whenever a creature you control dies, you lose a life and draw a card. You've gained the life off that creature coming into play. You might as well get something when it leaves play. Erebos, God of the Dead, and Greed do pretty much the same thing, except Greed does it more efficiently, while if your devotion to black is high enough, Erebos can also block. If you're going to sit there and just mindlessly spend life like this, you might as well try for have something in play that makes it worthwhile, or more worthwhile at least. That's where Villas, Broker of Blood comes into play, and yes, I understand he costs 8 mana. He's also an 8/8 flyer. He also lets you pay life to do things. Oh, and by the way, whenever you lose life, you draw cards. So every activation of Greed is 3 cards. Just think about that for a minute. Phyrexian Arena is a guaranteed 2 card. Blood Gift Demon is a guaranteed 2 card. Dark Prophecy, every creature you have that dies is guaranteed 2 cards. This is like a $4 card, and his big fat body on the table, so you might as well have him around. You've got all these creatures in play, and sometimes you want to do something other than draw a card. Attrition lets you sacrifice one to kill another creature. Bond with the Glorified lets you sack them to scry. God Eternal Bond 2 lets you just chump a whole bunch of them off for a big pile of cards, which is far more efficient than the area could ever be. And then since they're dying anyway, let's face it, they're creatures. Creatures die. It's the other thing they do. Bastion of Remembrance and Blood Artist and Sir Conrad the Grim will also help make your opponent's lives more difficult when they die. And in the process of making all the images for this, I realized that I didn't have a Zulaport Cutthroat in there because it's the same damn thing as Blood Artist. So that's an edit I'll have to make when I'm done all of this. But we're going to keep on the theme of stealing life from your opponents because they don't really need it, do they? I mean, you need that life way more than they do. After all, you're trying to win the game. Direfleet Ravager comes into play. 5 casting cost, Orc Pirate, and everyone loses a third of their life. Now, in some Commander games, if you're playing against that guy with like the life gain deck, and he's got 200 and some life, you're like, how do I chew my way through this? Well, there's a third of it. As long as you throw in a few ways to get the guy back a few times, yeah, it's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt that guy a lot more than you. Also, Torgar Famine Incarnate lets you turn someone's life total into half their starting life total. Half. In a Commander game, that's 20 life. From wherever you were. 20. That's a huge hit. Grey Merchant of Asphodel bleeds everyone for a whole bunch depending on your devotion to black. Like I said, this thing's got a lot of black mana symbols in it. And if you're lucky enough that you managed to pull an Exquisite Blood or an Archery of Despair out of a pack before the prices went absolutely mad, you have no idea the horrible things that happen when you have some of these cards in play. So Exquisite Blood lets you gain life whenever an opponent loses life. I'm not playing the other one because I feel that's a little bit of an asshole move to do both at the same time. Archery of Despair keeps your opponents from gaining life, and then at the end of each end step, they lose life equal to what they lost that turn. So if you can pound out a Direfleet Ravager, and you have the Archfiend out, they've lost a third, and then they'll lose that same number again. Provided you haven't done, well, they're going to lose that anyway, and probably more depending on what else you've thrown on the board in the meantime. So for the mana department, on the left there, all the things you'd expect to see in a mono black commander deck in terms of getting stuff into play and getting more land out. Alter the Pantheon, costs 3 and taps for 1 mana of a color of your choice when you play it. And it also adds the devotion you have to that color. Now, we've already seen Abhorrent Overlord, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, and you can see Nykthos Shrine to Nyx hiding in the land stack there. It does kind of work with a few other things. Bontu's Monument makes your creature spells cost 1 less, and given the cost of some of the creatures in this deck, holy wow, do I need it. And whenever you cast a creature spell, everyone loses a life and you gain 1, so it's sort of right there next to area, and it does double duty. The land, yeah, kind of the same stuff. I threw Leech-Ridden Swamp in because you can tap it to make your opponents lose a life, which every 1 point is going to get you somewhere, and if you manage to get Velas out, or no, whatever. Friction Tower lets you sack things in case you need some black mana, especially if it's like a token. Something that came into play and you're not doing much with it anyway. High Market lets you sack guys for life. And at Castle Locthwain, if you've got Velos out and 4 cards in your hand, well, I'll just tap and draw 5. It's weird how some of these cards interact together, isn't it? So yes, Area First of Locthwain has so many things it can do. And while the deck does seem to push in multiple directions, it still all does roughly the same thing. You are gaining life and you're using life to do things. You're using resources to draw cards. And this should help you get ahead of your opponent in doing certain things. Yeah, there's probably a few other cards I could put in here. My spot removal is not really great right now. I haven't, to be honest, I'm more worried about just getting stuff into play so it does things than I am on spot removal. I've got to feed the swarm and a murder and maybe something else. The deck's a little light on board wipes because I want to have as much of my stuff in play as I can. And I sorted my cards out. I'm not sure where I put all my plague winds. But anyway, if you like this deck, you think it's interesting, or you think it's terrible, comment section right there down below. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the future.